All right, so next up, we have Michael Rubenstein and Cyril Zimmerman. Cyril's the CEO of High Media, based in France. Michael is our president. He joined us from Google a couple of years ago. He needs very little introduction, but I will try anyway. You guys can come on in. When Michael joined from Google, there was a funny story last week about how he had to uninvite me from the Google conference. And so, Michael, I'd like to officially uninvite you from our conference.
Oh, thank you. Too late. Great. Well, thanks, Brian. And welcome, Cyril.
Thanks.
Do you have a New York?
Yeah, thank you.
All right,
thank you very much.
That's where my French is going to stop for today.
It's pretty good.
Okay, good. Before I embarrass myself. But Cyril is the, as Brian mentioned, the founder, the chairman, the CEO of High Media, which is sometimes not so well known in the US market, but obviously a huge brand and very well known in the European market. Could you tell us just a little bit about High Media? Tell us about the company.
Sure. High Media is a company I have created 16 years ago, so a while ago. Our business is mainly being a sales rep operation, so we're not in a network in the American way, because what we do is that either we own inventory and we have own and operated website in our portfolio, or we secure exclusive inventory through binding contracts with website. And we've been doing that, building something that has been growing substantially over the 15 past years. And of course, we adapt ourselves to the market in the different ways of selling at the best price possible the inventory to the advertisers and to the media buying centers. And it's been quite successful. Now the company is employing 500 people. We have offices and teams in 9 countries. We have as well a joint venture in Brazil and a small presence in Mexico. Company is public since 11 years. These are not the best days to be a public company, but well, these things can change. And we posted last year roughly $300 million US dollars of revenue, and will be growing fastly this year. So this is the main facts about High Media. And we've been signing an agreement with AppNexus 1.5 months ago, and we're quite excited about that. Maybe we're going to talk a little bit more about it.
Absolutely. I definitely want to talk about that. But I think one of the key things about High Media is the fact that the company has constantly evolved and taken advantage of new market opportunities, and I definitely want you to talk about the partnership with AppNexus and where you see that going. But one of the coolest new opportunities that I saw you take advantage of as an entrepreneur was I was visiting Cyril in Paris over the summer, and there was a strike on, and you couldn't get from the city center to the airport in a taxi. And so Cyril said, well, that's okay. I own a motorcycle taxi company. And he had a fleet of motorcycles come into the office and pick us up and just get us right to the airport. It was really impressive. And are you thinking about bringing that service to New York?
I mean, strike is a national sport in France, so you have to adapt yourself, basically. But beside that, since High Media is public, I wanted to find something as a diversification for myself where I would not be conflicted, and I think I found something where I have no conflict of interest between High Media's business and this business.
It's true. It's cool. If you're ever in Paris, you need to get around. Trust me, it's the best way to get around town.
Sure.
So, let me ask about the partnership. 1.5 months ago, we announced a big partnership, High Media and AppNexus coming together. It's something we feel very, very excited about. Could you tell me a little bit about that partnership from your perspective and what the vision is moving forward?
So, as I said, we aggregate publishers' inventory, selected website, because the only publishers that we aggregate are top 300 by Nielsen.com country by country. And we do that on exclusive level, which means that we have great control over the inventory, and the inventory that we have in portfolio, nobody else than ourselves can sell it. And we've been doing that in the old-fashioned way, I would say, during 15 years. And suddenly happened to come to the market the ad exchange model. I remember meeting Michael 3 years ago on stage to a paid conference. And we were already talking about ad exchange. I think I had no clue about what it was, but I was on stage, so I had to improvise. And since then, well, we had a few learnings and realized that we have, I think, for High Media, a unique position on the European market because we have a close control of the inventory, because we have scale, which is important. And Europe is not one single market. That's 27 different markets if you take into consideration the European Union. So you have local particularities and you have local markets everywhere. So you need scale, not in one market, but in 9, 10, 15 markets. And we have that. And the cost to entry is pretty high. So having that is a great asset. Second, the market is quite open. Since this is a mix of different local markets, you don't have a lot of global players or regional players that can have such a scale and such a position that they are the clear number one. So market situation is quite open, and we had scale, we had teams, we had experience, and we have this DNA, which is, I think, also a great asset, is to know how to handle relationship with publishers. That's our daily job, to handle relationship with publishers. It's not a one-year contract that makes us go to the beach during 1 year. It's a day-to-day thing that we have to do with them. And I think there's not so many companies that can handle that, because most of the advertising companies on the market since 15 years are sometimes too much focused on two things, which is technology and media. So we decided to focus on media and to handle relationship with publisher. So the missing part, obviously, was the technology. We have decided to develop our own technology a few years ago. And how Mike said from CPX, I mean, why trying to develop something on your own when there is something which is already scalable, which is already perfect on the market? And we found AppNexus as a perfect solution for us to merge these different assets, which is position to the market, knowledge of the publisher, and scale, with the technology of AppNexus, so that we could bring the biggest ad marketplace on the European market and be an alternative to Google. I mean, Google is obviously the leading ad marketplace and the ad exchange solution in the US. I think the initiative that was mentioned previously about Yahoo, AOL, and Microsoft gathering their inventory together show that there is a need for an alternative. In Europe, AOL is not present as they used to be. Yahoo may not have the same position as they used to be. Microsoft is strong, but we are one of the leaders of this market, of this collection of different markets, and we want to create this alternative to Google Ad Exchange in Europe. And that's what we can do with the AppNexus technology, which is great, top-notch, and evaluating on a daily basis almost, as you've seen with the App Store, with the app initiative that was recently announced.
That's great. And you have, as you mentioned, I mean, High Media is the largest independent ad network in Europe and one of the largest publishing groups in the world. So you have those local relationships in countries all across Europe and huge scale already. Your intention is to take that volume and those impressions that today don't participate in the exchange ecosystem and bring them into this online exchange ecosystem?
Yeah, we're going to migrate the whole inventory into the ad exchange, which is a big shift. I mean, we've been changing the model of having sales team on the ground, selling the advertising campaign IO by IO to something which is going to be automated, where the technology will do a part of the job, and then the human intelligence has to be somewhere else in the business. So, and we took this comparison a few days ago with journalism to some ways. I mean, in the middle or just before the first half of the 20th century, when you talked about journalism and war journalism, great reporters were people like Ernest Hemingway sent in Spain to cover the Spanish Civil War, and they stayed there for a couple of months, and if you were lucky, you had to wait 2 or 3 months before having some news about what was happening in the Spanish Civil War. And the intelligence and the human skills were about being able to go there, being able to see what was happening, to understand what was happening, to write and to report. Today, journalism is sometimes about foreign journalism, listening to what the Twitter, or reading the Twitter feeds and analyzing these Twitter feeds so that you may have something to bring on top of real-time information. So I think that technology, real-time feeds, whether they are advertising feeds or journalism feeds, obliged all the company that we are to change our paradigm, and instead of doing things manually and putting our intelligence about doing things manually in the best way as possible, now we have to let the technology do the stuff as good as the technology can do, and have intelligence building something as a service, as an intelligent analytic service around the technology. And that's a big shift for an ad network or for a rep sales house, because this is a different business model that we have to invent. Although, on one hand, our business is about aggregating inventory, so we are on the supply side. And on the other hand, the relationship that we have with advertisers and media business is still core. So we're in the same ecosystem, but we shift the competencies and the organization of the team to be able to migrate into what's going to be the future of the online advertising industry, we believe.
So I saw that firsthand when I visited your offices over the summer. I remember I addressed an audience of your sales organization, hundreds of people from across Europe, and I remember we were talking about our proposed partnership at the time and the exchange ecosystem and the introduction of automation and programmatic buying. And I remember looking out into the audience and seeing a combination of fear and excitement. How do you, I mean, as someone leading a significant organization that has to lead a mentality shift and has to lead organizational change in order to be able to really capitalize on a new opportunity, how do you do that? How do you get your team ready? How do you change mentality within your company and within the market?
I think that's just the same example the first time you go to an Indian restaurant. I mean, you're excited and you're plenty of fear at the same time. So it's, I mean, there's no excitement without a bit of fear. And basically, I think that, as I said, we're shifting, obviously, the model from something that was really human-centric to something which is technology-centric with an added value, which is a human added value about analytics. So I think the teams of High Media are pretty exciting, and some of them are here today, and that was important for us to be, some High Media people being here today to be part of this excitement, because it's not, I mean, intellectually, this is a shift that you can do easily. When you have to run an organization, I mean, this shift is obviously different. So you need time, and you need good reason to be excited. And the fact that the market is shifting in such a way today in the US market, and that we had, as Brian said, the hype, and then disappointment, and then excitement, or positive excitement again, is really important for us. Because what we have to capitalize on is that we have to get some shorter learning curve period in Europe than the one that happened to be here. And that's the way how we can cope with the pace of the advertising industry, which is finding most of its innovation here in the US and adapt it in Europe. We want to import, basically, the ad exchange model to Europe. We want to facilitate the business for American companies to do something with European players that will use the same standards, the same technology, the same way of thinking and doing business. And I think that can be exciting to any kind of European organization, European teams, even if you wear a mustache and you have a baguette. I mean, that's something which is really exciting.
And you think European publishers, European agencies, and advertisers are going to embrace programmatic buying and selling the same way we've seen in the United States? I mean, clearly the market is starting behind, but you think it's going to catch up?
It is. I mean, you've been traveling to Europe a couple of times recently, and you've seen that there is basically, as I said, different local markets in Europe, but you have two main situations. You have, two main markets. You have the UK market, which is comparable to the US market as regards the maturity and the eagerness to go innovative, and you have continental Europe, which is always behind. But so UK is about the same stage of development than here. Continental Europe is surely behind, but the momentum is good. I mean, the time to market is happening now. This is the perfect moment to do something in Europe, because people are just seeing what added value and what upside they can get from this shift. And I can tell you that all the organizations of advertising companies in the industry nowadays are just asking themselves who they're going to work with, and most of them are going to work with AppNexus, and how are they adapt their organization so that it can work perfectly. And this is something that is going so quick. I'm impressed. I mean, old Europe, to quote Donald Rumsfeld, didn't move so fast in the last decade as it is today. So that's why we have a great excitement.
Well, while we're talking about Europe, I have to ask the question. You heard Felix obviously speak earlier about the fact that he thinks there's a chance that the European countries are going to drag the entire world economy down. You have the perspective on the ground. What's your take on what's happening in Europe and how it's likely to affect this market?
So for the American community, first, don't stop investing in Europe, please. First thing. I think that, well, I never thought that I would defend Silvio Berlusconi, but since we talked a bit about Italy, I mean, there is a kind of fantasy about what the situation is in Europe and what it is really. When we talk about Italy, Italy, the third largest economy of the Eurozone, and Silvio Berlusconi is probably not the greatest leader you could hope, but he's not the joke that you can see in the newspapers here or in the media aside the word. So I think, and basically this building in which we are sitting today has been built by an Italian designer, Renzo Piano, and I think it's still solid, it's not going to collapse tomorrow. So we have to be relatively confident about the fact that even though there's going to be financial crisis, there's going to be adjustment, there's going to be political changes probably in those countries, the business is still growing, and the online business is still growing, even though the macro environment is not so good. Give you another example about Greece. We talk a lot about Greece. And again, Greece is a very, very specific country that in no way you could compare to Italy or Portugal. I mean, Greece doesn't have literally a modern state. People don't pay their taxes. Recently, they pass a bill so that you should have some new taxes on real estate. The finance minister just said that he won't pay this bill himself because he thought it wasn't fair. He was the one to propose it to the parliament. So that's one thing. Second, when you look at the Greece economy, the GDP of Greece have been decreasing by 18% in the last 3 years. 18, or 18, whatever the language you use. It's huge. No country, even Argentina, didn't know that in 3 years, a decade ago. And still, I had this chat with the head of IAB in Greece. The online business is running. So of course, it's not running with the nicest growth figures that you could expect, but it's not decreasing. And if in some segment it's decreasing by 1 or 2% when the overall economy is decreasing by 18%. So I think that we are a privileged industry because we're catching up with the other media always, and that's good. So I think that whatever will happen will be isolated from the greatest mayhem that we would fear. And second, I don't think that this greatest mayhem will happen because if it was to happen, I think that Greece was the best example where it should have happened. And people are in the streets. It's violent, but it's not as violent as the French Revolution. So I think we still have margins.
All right, great. Well, Cyril, thank you so much for your perspectives. Real-time bidding, Indian restaurants, motorcycles, Berlusconi. I mean, this has been the most fun 15-minute conversation about the state of our industry I've had in a long time. We very much look forward to the partnership together and helping real-time bidding and the exchange ecosystem develop with you in Europe.
So we are. Thank you very much.
Excellent.
Thank you.